I'm standing on Collins Avenue in Miami Beach. The sun is shining. The ocean is gorgeous. $1 million condos line the street. Ferraris and Lamborghinis drive past. And in 26 years, this street will be underwater at high tide. Not maybe, not possibly, will be. I'm going to show you the maps. The actual scientific projections from NOAA, from NASA, from the Army Corps of Engineers. Not some environmental activist's worst-case scenario. The official government data. And then, I'm going to show you what's happening right now. The property's already flooding. The insurance company's already fleeing. The real estate agents who know the truth but are still selling beachfront property for millions of dollars. Because here's what nobody wants to say out loud. A huge chunk of Florida's coastline is going to be uninhabitable within our lifetimes. And people are still buying property there like nothing's wrong. This isn't a political video. I don't care what you believe about climate change. I'm just going to show you the water. And the water doesn't care about politics. Let's start with the science, and then I'll show you the money. Sea level rise is happening. That's not debatable. It's measurable. We have tide gauges that have been recording for over 100 years. In Miami Beach, sea level has risen about 8 inches since 1950. That doesn't sound like much, but it's accelerating. From 1950 to 2000, the rise was about 4 inches. From 2000 to 2023, it was another 4 inches. The rate is increasing. NOAA projects that by 2050, sea level will rise an additional 10 to 12 inches in South Florida under their intermediate scenario. That's the middle of the road projection. Not worst case, not best case. Middle. That brings the total rise since 1950 to about 20 inches. Almost 2 feet. Now, you might be thinking, 2 feet? That's not that bad. My house is well above 2 feet, and you'd be missing the point. Sea level rise doesn't just mean the ocean is 2 feet higher. It means storm surge from hurricanes is 2 feet higher starting from a higher baseline. King tides flood areas that never flooded before. Groundwater rises, making drainage impossible. Saltwater intrudes into freshwater aquifers. Beaches disappear. Seawalls fail. It's not just about the average sea level. It's about what happens during storms, during high tides, during full moons. And that's when entire neighborhoods go underwater. Let me show you what this looks like on a map. I'm going to pull up the NOAA Sea Level Rise Viewer. This is a publicly available tool. You can look this up yourself. Go to coast.noaa.gov/SLR. I'm zooming into South Florida. Miami Beach, specifically. At the current sea level, Miami Beach is fine. A few low spots, but mostly okay. Now I'm adding 2 feet of sea level rise. This is the 2050 projection. Watch what happens. Entire streets are now in the flood zone. Collins Avenue in multiple places. Alton Road, Indian Creek Drive, Sunset Harbor, all underwater at high tide. We're not talking about storm surge. We're talking about regular high tides. Now let me show you 4 feet of sea level rise. This is the 2070 to 2080 projection, depending on emissions scenarios. Miami Beach is mostly gone. About 60% of the island is uninhabitable. South Beach, Mid Beach, North Beach, all regularly flooded. Key Biscayne? Half of it is underwater. Fisher Island? That ultra-wealthy private island where the average home is $7 million? Completely inundated. Let's look at other areas. Fort Lauderdale beachfront? Underwater. Delray Beach? large portions flooded. Palm Beach? Mar-a-Lago would be underwater at high tide. Naples? Coastal areas uninhabitable. Tampa Bay? Massive flooding in low-lying areas. This isn't speculation. This is projected by NOAA using current scientific models. Now let me talk about what's already happening, because the future is already here in some places. Miami Beach has spent over $500 million in the last decade on pumps and road raising to deal with flooding. They're installing massive pump systems to pull water out of the streets during king tides. It works. Temporarily. But the pumps are fighting a losing battle because sea level keeps rising. They've raised some roads by 2 to 3 feet, literally tore up the pavement, added fill, repaved, cost millions per block. And you know what happens to the houses on those blocks? The road is now higher than their driveways, so water pools in their yards because drainage flows toward the house instead of toward the street. They raised a road to save the road. But now, the houses flood. The city is trying to engineer its way out of a problem that engineering can't solve. You can't pump fast enough to keep up with sea level rise. Let me talk about what this means for property values, because this is where it gets really interesting. Right now, Miami Beach waterfront condos are still selling for $2 million, $5 million, $10 million. Why? If everyone knows the sea is rising, why are people still buying? A few reasons. 1. Short-term thinking. Wealthy buyers figure they'll own the property for 10 or 15 years, enjoy it, and sell before it becomes a problem. They're playing musical chairs, hoping they're not the one holding the property when the music stops. 2. Denial. People genuinely don't believe it will be that bad. Or they think technology will save us. Or they think the government will build massive seawalls. 3. The market hasn't fully priced in the risk yet. Real estate moves slowly. The data is there, but it takes time for markets to react. But here's what's starting to happen. Insurance companies are noticing. Flood insurance in coastal Florida is becoming unaffordable or unavailable. The National Flood Insurance Program is billions of dollars in debt because they keep paying out claims in flood-prone areas. They've raised rates dramatically. Some coastal properties now pay $10,000 to $15,000 a year for flood insurance. Private insurers are pulling out entirely. Citizens Property Insurance, Florida's insurer of last resort, is overwhelmed. And here's the kicker. Flood insurance has a cap. Maximum payout is $250,000 for structure and $100,000 for contents. If you have a $3 million beachfront house and it floods, you get $250,000. You lose $2.75 million. So wealthy buyers are self-insuring. They're buying properties knowing they might lose them. They're treating beachfront real estate like a depreciating asset, like a car or a boat. That's fine for billionaires. But for regular people who bought a beachfront condo as their retirement dream, they're screwed. Let me tell you about a specific neighborhood. Shorecrest in Miami. Shorecrest is about 5 to 7 feet above sea level. Not beachfront, but close to Biscayne Bay. These are nice houses. $800,000 to $1.5 million. Families, professionals, not ultra-wealthy, but doing well. This neighborhood floods during king tides now. Not every king tide, but the strong ones. I talked to a guy named Mark who bought there in 2019. He paid $950,000 for a renovated 3-bedroom house. Beautiful place. He loves it. 2 months after he moved in, October 2019, king tide flooding. Water in the street, up to the bottom of his driveway. He wasn't worried. Just a rare event, right? It's happened 6 more times since then. October 2020, October 2021, September 2022, October 2022, November 2023, October 2024. It's getting worse each time. The October 2024 king tide put water in his garage. He tried to sell last year. Listed for $975,000, hoping to break even. Got one offer, $720,000. He turned it down. Now he's stuck. He owes $780,000 on his mortgage. Even if he takes the $720,000 offer, he'd lose $60,000 plus selling costs. He'd have to bring money to closing to get out of his house. So he's staying. And every king tide, he watches the water get closer. That's sea level rise in real time. That's what it looks like when the future arrives early. Now, let me talk about the controversy, because this is where people get upset. There are people who will tell you this is all exaggerated, that climate models are unreliable, that sea level rise is natural and cyclical, that humans have nothing to do with it. I'm not going to argue about the cause. That's for scientists and politicians to debate. What I'm telling you is this. The water is rising. You can measure it. You can see it. You can watch it flood streets that didn't flood 20 years ago. Whether it's caused by humans or natural cycles or solar activity or whatever, the water doesn't care. It's rising, and it's going to keep rising. And if you own property in the flood zone, you're betting your life savings that the projections are wrong. Maybe they are. Maybe sea level rise will slow down. Maybe it will stop. But what if it doesn't? Let me talk about the economic implications of this, because it's bigger than just individual homeowners. Florida's economy is heavily dependent on coastal real estate. Property taxes from coastal properties fund local governments. Sales from coastal real estate generate enormous wealth and economic activity. If coastal property values crater, if flood insurance becomes impossible to get, if properties become uninsurable and unmortgageable, the entire Florida economy takes a massive hit. Banks hold mortgages on these properties. If the properties become worthless, those mortgages go bad. That affects the banking system. Pension funds invest in Florida real estate. If those values drop, retirees lose money. This isn't just a problem for coastal homeowners. This is a systemic economic risk, and nobody wants to talk about it because acknowledging it would crater the market immediately. So we have this weird situation where everyone kind of knows what's coming, but nobody wants to be the first to admit it publicly because that would trigger the collapse. It's a collective delusion. And the longer it goes on, the worse the eventual crash will be. Let me show you what some cities are trying to do about this. Miami Beach is spending billions on pump systems and road raising. It's buying them maybe 20 years. Maybe. Fort Lauderdale is studying managed retreat. That's the technical term for abandoning parts of the city. Some wealthy coastal towns are building massive seawalls, but seawalls are expensive. They damage beaches, and they only work up to a certain sea level. And here's the problem with seawalls. If you build a seawall to protect against 3 feet of sea level rise, and the sea rises 4 feet, you just wasted billions of dollars. You're betting billions that the sea will stop rising at exactly the height you built for. That's a really expensive bet. Some people propose floating buildings, amphibious architecture, houses that rise with the water. Cool concept, not realistic at scale. And good luck getting a mortgage on a floating house. The reality is that there's no engineering solution that works long-term at a reasonable cost. At some point, you have to accept that certain areas will become uninhabitable and you need to move people out. But nobody wants to say that, because the moment you say, we need to abandon this area, property values go to zero immediately. So we pretend we can engineer our way out, and we buy ourselves a few more years of pretending everything is fine. Let me talk about who gets hurt in this scenario. It's not going to be the billionaires buying $20 million penthouses in Miami Beach. They'll be fine. They'll enjoy their properties for a while, and when it gets bad, they'll move. They have other houses. It's a rounding error for them. It's going to be the middle-class families who bought their dream beach condo with their life savings. It's going to be the retirees who sold their house up north and bought in Florida for the weather. It's going to be the young couples who stretched to afford a place near the water. Those are the people who are going to get wiped out when the market corrects and their property becomes worthless. And it's already starting. Properties in flood zones are selling for less than comparable properties out of flood zones. The discount used to be 5% to 10%. Now it's 20% to 30% in some areas. Smart money is leaving. Institutional investors are quietly selling coastal property. They're not announcing it. They're not making a big deal, but they're getting out. And regular people are buying what they're selling, not realizing they're catching a falling knife. Let me tell you what you should do if you own coastal property in Florida. 1. Look at the NOAA sea level rise maps. Know what your property looks like at 2 feet, 4 feet, and 6 feet of sea level rise. 2. Check your flood insurance. What are you actually covered for? What's your deductible? What's the payout cap? 3. Understand your elevation. If you're less than 10 feet above current sea level, you're at risk in the next 20 to 30 years. 4. Track king tides. If your area is flooding during king tides now, it's going to get worse. 5. Have an exit strategy. At what point do you sell? What's your trigger? 6. Don't assume the government will save you. They're not going to buy out millions of properties at full value. That's not realistic. And if you're thinking about buying coastal property in Florida, do it with your eyes open. Maybe you'll get 20 good years out of it. Maybe you'll be able to sell before it becomes a problem, but maybe you won't. And you need to be okay with potentially losing your investment, because the water is coming. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how fast. Let me end with this. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to inform you. The data is available. The maps are public. The projections are published by government agencies. This isn't a secret. It's just uncomfortable. So most people ignore it. But ignoring it doesn't change reality. In 2050, parts of Miami Beach will be underwater at high tide. That's 26 years from now. If you buy a 30-year mortgage on a property there today, your house might be flooding before you pay off the loan. Is that a smart investment? You decide, but decide based on data, not hope. Because hope is not a financial strategy. Comment below. Do you own coastal property in Florida? What's your plan? Are you concerned? I want to hear from people who are actually dealing with this. See you in the next one.